Hello there and welcome to Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter Knowles. I live on this classic wooden motor cruiser, as well as this classic wooden motor cruiser here in Genoa Bay, British Columbia, along with the loving memory of my pup Geordie, fixing them both and others up for some pretty ambitious cruising. If that's the sort of thing that you might find interesting, please consider sticking around and subscribing. I'd love to have you. And yes, I'm back from all that festival adventuring and time to get back to work in the shed. And this time we're going to have Zephyrus in the shed for a little bit. Let me tell you all about it. Well, good, beautiful fall morning to you. It's mid-September and it's just lovely. Look here, Zephyrus is back in the shed and she's going to be here about another month for some pretty major upgrades to the aft cabin. Let me show you. Zephyrus is getting to the point where the bottom and the exterior are in pretty good shape and doesn't need that much more. So we thought it might be time to pay some more attention to the interior. Now, it's certainly not an unpleasant place. Lady Zephyrus keeps it very, very cozy. However, it is largely unchanged since she first bought the boat, and I removed the dinette that was back here, moved this bulkhead forward, recreated the new stove and bit of stainless countertop in here, and put the bed in. Slightly less elegant was a Craigslist dresser find that we plunked on top of the old settee that was here to create some dresser space for her. And of course, because a big galley is a big part of Lady Zephyrus's joy of the boat, almost full-size apartment-size fridge was definitely part of the solution. So what I'm thinking back here is really just a tidy up. Of course, the bulkheads were originally mahogany. They were painted in the past, and there's a lot of damage under there. They can't be refinished back to mahogany, so they'll be veneered with new Sapili mahogany. And all the overheads in here, which I put in years ago but never put any trim on, will get all the little trim pieces, much like I was able to do in the wheelhouse last spring. As well as new upper cabinets in here. These are lovely, but just not all that effective for what she really needs in terms of a galley. Some improvements to cabinetry down below, proper cabinetry under the bed, and a full proper built-in mahogany dresser of some sort here. How much we'll get to in the next little while, I'm not quite so sure, but I hope you'll find it interesting and follow along. Let's get started. The boat currently has no hanging locker anywhere aboard, which I'm going to change in the not too distant future by putting something in the forecastle. But in the aft cabin, there's only ever been this little nook to hang coats and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is the new dresser I'm going to put in is going to start, a good 8 or 10 inches forward to allow this whole section of the bulkhead here to become a bit of a couple more hooks, and there's more space to put stuff. As I'm going to veneer this bulkhead with Sapili mahogany, just thin 1/8 inch stuff, instead of scribing it around this little bit of trim here, I'm actually just going to cut a little sliver off the end of it because it is just a trim piece, and that'll make that a lot tidier. That should just slide out of there now. Very nice. And that'll just slide in there now. Like that. I'll sort that out afterwards. This way at least I can get this bulkhead off. I can confidently say I'm not particularly proud of the way I first built this bed. I think I can put it back together slightly more clever than last time. I think there might have been budget constraints at the time. Oh, okay. This sort of yucky mess can go. It was several years ago now that I actually made this little mahogany light switch mount, and I actually still just love it. It's not the porcelain fixtures that I've been so fortunate to have for my boats, but it's still quite adorable. Anyway, it'll be reused and put on top of the mahogany veneer we put here. Okay, before I get too excited about moving on here, I'm going to take the opportunity to correct some past sins. Most notably was the quick and dirty cockpit shower installation I put in a couple of years ago, and so I'm going to route that now down under the bed and lower these two propane lines to their more appropriate, and that'll be much tighter, insulate them at the same time. Now, those of you with keen eyes will notice that these three frames, and including that one, are not very happy. In fact, they're broken. This one is not, and this one is not. So I'm going to actually sister in between these frames with white oak this next spring at a haul out, and refasten all through there, and that will tighten this section up here. And this is the only section on both sides that Zephyrus has any broken frames, which is a happy thing. Okay, so first off, I'm going to lower these propane lines. Okay. Now I've already cut these underneath the cockpit floor, so these will just pull through and get geared up to reroute them. Now I'm going to reimagine the cockpit shower arrangement for next year, so I'm just going to cap these for now and send them back through, and I can deal with these in the spring. Through. And through. And that's a nice little project for me next spring. I'll insulate these while I have the opportunity. And back on with some proper size P-clips. Okay then, so I have a rough piece for the wallpapering here, and I'm just going to slide it in. I've cut it roughly to size. Fits in there nice. So now I just want to scribe the curve at the top. And this doesn't have to be really accurate because there's going to be a trim piece up here. But it'd be nice to get it, you know, sort of nice. There we go. Somewhere there. We'll be pretty close. And let's see how that fits. Let me tuck that in behind that. Up here. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. Perfectly fine for what I'm doing. That'll press in. That'll press in. Excellent. Okay. Okie doke. Ooze of construction sealant here. Construction adhesive. There we go. Pretty nice. Pretty nice. I'll just put some pins in it to basically tack it, but the glue will be doing the job. Alright then, a little bit of fiddling and figuring, and this should fit right in there. There. Okay, now this is not marine ply, but in this application I think it's going to be just fine. And again, I'm going to veneer it with mahogany on this side and stainless steel on the other side. Let's get the bed made. Oh, I can't be making any bed yet. I got to reinstall this outlet. Okay, so I've put this all together with red oak ledgers, and of course red oak is not necessarily the most fabulous wooden boat wood, because of course it is a bit of a sponge in the end grain, but I'm not worried about it in this situation. And when I want a really tough hardwood, which red oak is a fabulous, very economical wood for that. Okay, so this bed is going to be done a little bit differently than the bed I did in Pome, because it doesn't have to be cantilevered, so it doesn't need structure underneath. The 3/4 inch plywood is plenty of structure. So we got to get the first piece in. And here we go. So, unlike Pome, Zephyrus has a rather pronounced curve on the side of the hull at this point. So I've measured to the longest point, and now I'm going to have to scribe. This is a 3-knuckle scribe. There we go. Pretty nice, including 2 little notches for the 2 little bolts in the stringer here. All right, let's carry on with this last piece. All right, let's see how that feels. Beauty. Okay, so I've added a splice piece, and this should just slide right over. Nice. And that'll be plenty to stiffen this up. And by the time I put a front on here, and that will be a pretty secure bed. Awesome. And good morning. So the oil is pretty much dry, which is good because Lady Zephyrus would very much like her bed back together. Anyway, these very nice, very warm LED puck lights, which have been reading lights for her for the last many years, are really nice. And we want to install another one over on this side to make this piece of mahogany look just as good. And well, there is a third one, which is good, which I'm going to put that in. However, it had been here over the galley, and so I'm gonna have to switch that out for another light. But we're always juggling lights, no harm in that. But the new light for this location needs a slightly larger hole. Okay, this may all seem very mundane, but it gives me the opportunity to show you a pretty well-known trick. But if you don't know it, you're gonna want to know it. So if you need to drill a larger hole where you already have a smaller hole, you can take your hole saw and screw on the smaller hole saw inside the larger hole saw, giving you an automatic guide for the new hole. Very handy. Done. Beauty. Almost every generic toggle switch you can tighten with a 9/16 socket. These are such lovely lights. I wish you could still get them. So nice. Okay then, so you can see I'm laying out these battens across the masonite overheads here, and because the boat tapers, in other words it's wider as it moves forward, I want the spacing of the screws to also widen out. So we snapped, divided into 7 at the back and at the front into 7, and snapped lines between so that the screws would be in a relatively even line. Anyway, that's the process. So I take each of the pre-oiled and pre-sanded and 1 hole in the middle drilled battens, and I prepare them dead center here on the center line. And what that does is it holds it in place so that I can scribe the cuts at the ends, because as I mentioned, the boat is tapered. I take a straight edge and a pencil, and I line the straight edge up with the trim piece and just mark the scribe. There we go. Take it back down, take it out to the chop saw, and make those cuts. One little additional marking makes this a lot simpler, saves me from a huge mistake, and that's an arrow pointing forward. And now I'll just align that mark with the kerf guide here, and it's about like that, and over a hair, and down we go. To the other side. Let's go see how it fits. Okay then, position this end in, position this end in, and then you're lucky, it'll just snap right up. Love it. Okay, with this batten, you probably can't see it, but I have to cut out a small circular cutout to fit around part of the chimney. So what I'm going to do is, this hole saw is very close to the correct size, so I'm just going to index it by drilling the pilot hole into the bench, and then set this up on the arc that it made and clamp her down. And I should be able to now relatively cleanly, by replacing this index pilot bit, finish this cut. Although I think I'll switch to slow gear for this. There we go. Now we'll see how close that is. And carrying on with the work inside Zephyrus, I'm really pleased with the way this is looking. Really pleased. Finally got all the battens in around the skylight, worked out really well, and that neat little cutout around the fireplace chimney worked out quite well. Okay, so one of the projects I want to do today, along with getting a cap on this bulkhead, I'm going to strip this bronze porthole. This is a beautiful big bronze porthole that's been on the boat, and I've always wanted to see it stripped to bronze, as well as the one directly opposite in the head. But I don't want to damage any of this mahogany around here, so I'm going to take it apart and put a bunch of tape and plastic and get to it. I do have a brand new gasket for it as well, which is pretty hard to find. Okay, let's get started with that. You know, on second thought, I'm not sure I'm going to take it apart. It's very simple, a cotter pin and 2 pins, but I think I can actually do this in place just as well. I'm going to need a little wire brush, bronze or brass wire brush, to clean up in here anyway. I think that'll work just fine. Anyway, let's get this old gasket out of here and then start with some sort of masking of some sort. There we go. Now that went ridiculously simply. So to avoid damaging the wood, I'm going to start down at least at the bottom with this piece of 6mm poly and do a relatively rough cutout around there so I can add some more tape. All right then, with any luck, that's protected. And here we go. This is the same stripper I used to strip the bronze windlass. Well, that's moving along quite nicely. I'll let that sit a little bit longer while I advance this top rail here for the bulkhead between the galley and the bed. So I've made up the pieces, and which are going to go on here, and just slide them both into place. And I pre-drilled them to minimize dust indoors. Very nice. Now this side is going to be a bit of a trick. I'm putting the screws in, but then I'm going to back them off a little bit and slide a tiny thin little spacer in the top, which will compensate for the fact that the stainless steel doesn't go all the way and keep it from rocking in. Okay, so I just ripped this tiny little sliver of sapele, and now that this is all held, I can just back these screws out a hair and open this up a bit and insert my little spacer. And tighten it back up. They'll need to build some sort of box around that electrical outlet. Of course, I loathe to sand indoors, but this setup provides very, very effective dust collection, and there'll be almost nothing. Okay, now the cap. Now this needs a little finessing because I want to trim it to go underneath the side of the deck here and at least come to about there. There, about here, and then it actually slopes down under the deck, and worse yet, there's a bolt right there. Okay, so this is definitely a bit cowboy. What I'm going to do is a rip on end the full depth of the blade. Now I may not be able to get to my line there. Oh gosh. Max extension is right about there. Okay, so I'm just going to cut that rip on a slight bevel this way and on a slight twist this way. Yeah. The only thing I'm going to do in the sake of safety is actually work from the far side of the fence, and that will make it a lot safer, at least in my opinion. I'll finish that up. Now, of course, it's going to hit that bolt. Alright then, well, the bolt cutout might seem a little extreme, but okay. With all the counterbores pre-drilled, we can run this home. Nice! If you're new to the show, I fit all my interior bungs dry. The finish on there will be plenty enough to glue them in. That means if they ever have to come out, it's a super simple matter. I also, and it's quite controversial, mark all my bungs in advance for the grain line. Just to make sure I don't run into an embarrassing mistake. Okay, and now for the end cap, which will just tidy this all up and prepare for what I call a bed board. Anyway, you know, the board that comes along a mattress and scoops down, etc. So what I've done, actually, I haven't routed it where I expect that to be, and if I miss by a bit, I can easily sand that in. But this way I've got the bulk of the routering done in places where it's appropriate, up here and on this edge, but where I want this to be a nice flush connection, that'll stay just like that. Okay. I'm just going to tack that with that until I get it straight at the bottom. Okay, so this is coming along. I don't know how well this will clean off just yet. I think it just needs another coat. Well, perhaps some of you saw this coming. I didn't. The paint stripping is not going terribly well. It's lots of coats and lots of work and it's taking a long time. Well, that would be all right if this was a bronze porthole, but it's a steel porthole. I have the exact same ones. I mean, identical on Geordie, and they're bronze. So the biggest drag is I'm doing this as a surprise for Lady Zephyrus, and she's going to be home from work in an hour. Well, this truly is a disappointment, especially because I have to actually wipe these down and stop the process for today so that Lady Zephyrus can come home and sleep on her boat tonight, because this stuff is pretty smelly, and pick it up again tomorrow, only to get them clean enough so that they can be painted again. See? Alright, it's tomorrow, and I'm finally smartening up. I didn't want to remove them originally because I didn't want to mess up with the bedding, but this has turned into such a mess I can deal with redoing the bedding, and the truth is the bedding is probably junk anyway and should be renewed. Apologize to all of you who were screaming at the screen yesterday saying, Peter, just remove the bloody portals. There we go. There we go. Yeah, I think it was about time that was rebedded anyway. It's a subtle thing, but when you're doing something like this, try to keep in mind the direction of the grain. The direction of the grain in the cabin sides is in this direction. So if I cut across the grain and then with the grain, it's much less likely to bite. Now these studs are bronze. Well, I say studs, but I assume they're carriage bolts. However, they're embedded in epoxy on the other side of the cabin sides, so they're nothing much I can do with them. They are a little loose, but they're not turning, save for one. So I'm just going to clean them up as best I can, recut the threads, and hopefully they'll be happy. Kind of bothers me that they're loose though. All right then, so I've mixed up a tiny batch of thin epoxy. This actually isn't CPES, this is Gitrot, another similar brand. Anyway, and I'm going to use that to try and inject in here right against the threads and into the wood, hoping it might lock these carriage bolts in a little bit. It's kind of a panic action, but I can't think of another way that's reasonably effective and reasonably quick. Trick here is to not make a mess. Alright, so it's about an hour later and the remaining stuff in the syringe is getting good and thick. So that gives me a second chance to put an actual sort of fillet around the area just where the bolt enters the wood. And good morning. Well, have these set? Oh yeah, these feel a lot better. Nicely bonded in. I think that worked out really well. Unfortunately, this one was broken. I didn't really notice until I was epoxying it and cleaning up the nuts. All right, so, well, folks, here we go. You know, I don't actually hate it. I don't. It has a certain authenticity, a kind of, you know, realness to it. Whether that's a realness that is really attractive or not, I don't know yet. But I think I'm going to try and encourage Lady Zephyrus to leave it like this. I really don't think it looks all that bad. I guess it's galvanized, but it's galvanized in kind of a strange way that gives it, you know, not the worst patina ever. Anyway, the bronze or brass highlights certainly show it off nicely with the latch here and the fasteners. I'm really actually feeling pretty good about it. I'm really pleased with the epoxy setting for the carriage bolts. I think that worked out great. And a brand new gasket. These are particularly difficult to find. I was lucky to get the last few from my local chandlery here, Trotac in Victoria, but they don't expect they'll have any more. I'll have to try and find them somewhere online. There we go. So nice, so nice. You know, that isn't entirely terrible. Well, hello there and welcome to the Travels with Geordie Beer of the Week, coming to this week from the delightful dock on Lady Zephyrus's shed in Genoa Bay. Let's get straight to the beer, and this was a gift from a fine individual who came by, who I apologize, I cannot remember the name of. So if you were the kind person who delivered this to me in Port Townsend, thank you ever so much. All right, it's from Rogue Brewery and it is Bat Squatch, as in Sasquatch. Bat Squatch Hazy IPA, and everyone knows that's just my sort of thing. So let's get to it. Back to work. It's been great. It's been so nice, actually, to be getting back to work and sort of back into a regular routine. Not that the adventure wasn't a fantastic adventure, but it's been very satisfying to get going on some improvements to MV Zephyrus. All right, then. Just saved it. All right. Bat Squatch from Rogue. Excuse me. Wow. A fine, fine hazy. Oh my gosh, that really is good. And I have several more. Thank you ever so much, you person who gifted it to me. All right, last week's winner of a Travels with Geordie t-shirt is HINK519. I'm sure you know who you are. Congratulations, you've won yourself a Travels with Geordie t-shirt. Get a hold of me and we'll make sure we get it sent out to you. Cheers. And in the last little while, I'm so privileged to have 3 new Patreons. Thank you ever so much to Gary Conklin, Eric Lamontagne, and Kyle Bohlmeyer. And I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you all so very much, and cheers. That is really, really good. All right, because we're moving along quickly today. The word of the week this week, if you haven't already guessed, hello, Charlie. I suppose at some point it has to be Charlie. Anyway, the word of the week this week will be work, as in back to work or getting to work or doing some work. I think you'll know what to do with it. Cheers, see you next week.